Hey, Randy Joe here, and this is 1001 Reviews, a series where I plan on reviewing every single album from the 1001 Albums to Listen to Before You Die book. And today we are looking at Eric Clapton's 1974 album, 461 Ocean Boulevard. Ocean Boulevard was released underneath the RSO label, produced by Tom Dowd, with art direction from Bob Dufresne, nationality UK, and a running time of 36 minutes and 46 seconds. Now, Eric Clapton, at this point in his career, was pretty much a world-renowned name, especially given his massive band known as Cream, as well as serving as an incredible instrumentalist and guitarist for many bands in the past, such as the Yardbirds and the Blues Breakers with John Mayall. And at this point in time, he's already established himself as a pretty important and influential guitarist of the time, and definitely one to remember, often being heralded now as the single greatest guitar player of all time. That being said, Eric Clapton's approach with 461 Ocean Boulevard is completely different than that of his earlier albums here, as this time around, his guitar playing, what he has become so well known for, takes a much more subtle and backseat approach, giving way to a much wider and natural instrumentation over top, coming in from other musicians he invited onto the record. And you can feel that pretty much with every song on this record. And don't get me wrong, his guitar playing is still pretty great for what it is doing. However, it is definitely no longer the main focus of the record. And most of this record is actually made up of traditional blues songs or folk songs that Eric Clapton has reworked into a more modern sense at the time. Motherless Children is actually an example of that, as this time Eric Clapton takes a very somber and almost depressive song about losing a parent, and he adds a much more upbeat and energetic tempo to it that, in my opinion, doesn't necessarily match thematically. However, instrumentally definitely serves a pretty great purpose, as it definitely keeps quite a vibe going. It's got this very pummeling, almost train-like drum beat, which is very nice up against the almost coastal-like guitars from Eric Clapton. The only thing I dislike about this track, again, is that the overall themes of the songs don't necessarily match the atmosphere of the song. This album also contains the Eric Clapton hit, I Shot the Sheriff, which is a cover of the Bob Marley original and takes the reggae style of Bob Marley and fuses it with a soft rock instrumental, giving it a much more funkier and fun sort of approach, and also adding a lot more oomph to the track rather than feeling as if it is leaving something to be desired here. The chorus is pretty iconic at this point, and I feel like this is definitely a staple of Eric Clapton's for good reason, as it stands out in this era of Eric Clapton as quite a unique piece and a really interesting and almost better take than the Bob Marley original, detailing a very simple tale about a man who shot the sheriff and consistently claims that this shooting of the sheriff was done in self-defense, yet the law and the public are still after him. And speaking of this reggae tone with I Shot the Sheriff, the third track, Willie and the Hand Jive, definitely has a reggae tone as well with it, fusing once again with a soft rock style to create a very unique fusion. And again, this song is also a cover of the Johnny Otis original, whereas this time he takes that original song and slows it down dramatically to give a much more relaxed and coastal sort of vibe. Much more of a slow burn, I would say. And I think that is where Eric Clapton fits best in this album, is when he's going for the much slower sort of tones and feels as if he is taking a more subtle approach. Multiple tracks on here actually carry this sort of tone. The second track, Give Me Strength, is probably my favorite one on here, as Eric Clapton sings quite soulfully with a nice twangy guitar to it, as he speaks quite spiritually and sings out to God, pretty much begging for strength in his life at this point and asking for God's help. And with this religious sort of theme, there is this really nice organ playing as well that adds to the overall religious sermon type vibe that this track continually goes for, feeling very spiritual and uplifting in the end. And Please Be With Me is another track on here that, again, I feel fits this overall subtle and unique approach that I come to appreciate from Eric Clapton a lot more than his much harder sounds, as the very gentle plucking of the guitars, the very soft organ playing, the very gentle instrumentation in general feels like it is greatly complemented and contrasted greatly by Eric Clapton's very soft and almost raw style of singing here. I would say among the entire album, this is my favorite performance from Eric Clapton so far. And the backup vocals too of this track only add to that gentle and beautiful approach. There are some rather weak tracks, however. For example, the 9th track, Steady Rollin' Man, feels like a very bland and generic blues rock song, really not doing anything to add to the album, but instead feels as if it isn't necessarily even part of the album in terms of its overall style and tone. And the 8th track, Let It Grow, which, even though lyrically is pretty dense and definitely worthy of note, it definitely feels like this is a Stairway to Heaven ripoff in all things but lyrics. The overall instrumentation here and the chord progression is pretty much a almost one-for-one replica of Stairway to Heaven, which released prior to this song. I would also say that this is a really great spring/summer album, as it carries a very optimistic and bright sort of laid-back vibe that fits with these seasons. And even though I don't talk enough about albums fitting to seasons, this is definitely one that I would say put on when springtime comes around, as it fits that tone completely. And with all that in mind, the soft rating of this album came to a 7.5 out of 10, but I will bump that up to an 8 out of 10 for its overall just cohesive and consistency throughout. And finally, I would also like to say that, is this a must-listen album before you die? Do you get something out of this that you would not have already gotten in the book? Is this a unique or interesting perspective on a genre? I would say not so much. This is definitely 100% essential if you're looking for a nice spring album, or if you really enjoy Eric Clapton, as I think this is a unique venture for him. But in the grand scheme of music overall, this is a not essential record. I don't think this album stands out too greatly that if somebody were to miss it, I would completely understand, as it doesn't feel as if it is a must listen before you die as a music fan. But again, if you want a really great, enjoyable, laid-back listen, put this thing on. This is definitely perfect for that. That pretty much does it for this review. Let's go ahead and see what the next album you're listening to is in the 1001 Albums to Listen to Before You Die book. 1 to 1001, Generate. 472, which will be the album. 472 being the album Heart Attack and Vine by Tom Waits. So go ahead and give Tom Waits' Heart Attack and Vine a listen, and I'll review that in about 1 week from now. Anyways, that pretty much does it for this video. If you like the video, please hit like and subscribe, and follow along if you want to listen to every album from the 1001 Albums to Listen to Before You Die book. And as always, my name is Randy Joe, and I'm signing off.